I never imagined I'd confront a rude billionaire in the restaurant that changed my life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started with the quiet clattering of silverware, the soft murmur of conversations, and the flickering candlelight that created an intimate atmosphere. The air felt charged, electric, as if something monumental was about to happen. I sat alone at a corner table, nervous fingers twisting the cloth napkin. My heart raced. The waiter had just delivered my favorite dish, but the joy of the moment was overshadowed by dread. I had come to celebrate a small victory, a rare moment of hope after months of struggle. But in that dim light, hope felt like a fragile glass, ready to shatter. Across the restaurant, I spotted him. The billionaire. Tall, commanding, and surrounded by an entourage like a king on his throne. His presence sucked the air out of the room. I could see the arrogance in his smile, the disdain in his eyes. Every conversation hushed, every gaze turned. He was a storm waiting to unleash chaos. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted. Head knocked over a wine glass. Glass shards scattered like stars across the marble floor. I held my breath. The silence was palpable. Everyone turned, eyes wide. A moment hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. Would he laugh it off? Would he even care? A young woman approached, hands trembling. She was a waitress, desperate to smooth things over. But he barked at her, his voice a thunderclap drowning out the restaurant's soft symphony. Get out of my sight. Do you even know who I am? The cruelty in his tone made my chest tighten. I felt her humiliation like a knife in my own heart. As I watched, raw anger surged within me. I couldn't just sit there. I shouldn't have cared, but I did. I rose from my seat, my legs feeling like lead. Excuse me, I said, voice shaking but firm. His eyes turned toward me, narrowing with irritation. A shadow passed over the room, the air thick with tension. My heart thundered. Did I really just challenge a billionaire? I was drawn in, a moth to a flame, each step pounding with purpose and fear. What was I doing? Every eye turned on me, whispers sliced through the silence like a knife. The waitress stood frozen, her wide eyes pleading. Before I could second-guess myself, I blurted out, "You don't have to speak to her like that. Everyone deserves respect." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt exposed, every heartbeat echoing in my ears. Time slowed as I awaited his reaction. That he smirked, a look of pure amusement flickering across his face. "And what will you do about it?" he taunted, drawing closer, an appraising glint in his eyes. My pulse quickened. Was I in over my head? Before I could answer, a loud crash echoed again. This time it was my own heart, splintering under the pressure. In that charged moment, I realized something shocking. The waitress wasn't the only one at his mercy. I felt trapped in a web of fear and indignation, wondering if standing up for her would cost me my dignity, or worse, my safety. I braced myself, ready for whatever was to come next. As I took a breath, hoping to find strength, the billionaire's expression hardened. "Leave now, or you'll regret it," he warned, a sinister promise lurking in his tone, and in that vast sea of uncertainty, I stood my ground. A storm was brewing, and I had unwittingly become a part of it. What would happen next? What would this confrontation unlock? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The tension in the restaurant was suffocating, a thick fog creeping into my lungs as I faced the billionaire, his eyes flickering with a mix of amusement and menace. I felt my knees tremble slightly, a silent plea for my body to retreat, but something deeper held me anchored to the spot. Perhaps it was the memory of the waitress's shocked expression that propelled me forward, the knowledge that I had a chance to make a small difference in what felt like a world ruled by indifference. As I stood there, a silence blanketed the room, interrupted only by the soft rustle of the wind outside, a haunting reminder that life continued beyond this moment. I could feel the weight of every gaze upon me, 1,000 silent judgments hovering in the air. "Do you forget that I own this place?" the billionaire drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. "Do you think that makes you better than anyone?" I shot back, surprising even myself with the sudden courage that surged within me. It's amazing what adrenaline can fuel. I glanced briefly at the waitress, her wide eyes now glimmering with a hint of hope. Maybe I wasn't the only one who needed this moment. "Perhaps you think you can challenge my authority?" he said, leaning closer, his breath hot. I resisted the urge to recoil, standing tall, even as my pulse raced. He was like a dark cloud above us, threatening to rain chaos, yet I found myself wishing for a flicker of light. In that moment of heated confrontation, something unexpected happened. The restaurant's manager, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a weathered face, stepped forward. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw understanding, a shared acknowledgement of the struggle against tyranny, however small. "Mr. Hargrove," he said, his voice steady despite the quaking atmosphere. "I believe we need to uphold the dignity of our staff." The billionaire's smirk faltered briefly, and for a moment, I thought he might step back. But he shot the manager a glare that could curdle milk, his amusement replaced by irritation. "And I believe you're only making this worse for everyone," he spat. "If the restaurant loses customers over this incident, who will be the real loser?" The manager pressed, a flame of determination igniting in his features. The other patrons shifted uneasily, whispers ricocheting like bullets through the air. In some ways, this unexpected alliance, however fleeting, nudged the world around us towards a shimmer of solidarity. The billionaire, caught off guard, laughed then. It wasn't a warm laugh, it was jagged, sharp-edged, filled with contempt. "You'll pay for this," he threatened, and I felt a chill sweep through me. My heart sank into a deeper pit of fear. What could he do to us? For all his wealth and power, this man thrived on maintaining control, reveling in the anguish he could inflict. In that fragile moment, an elderly couple near the entrance stood up. The man tapped his glass, drawing attention, channeling the bubbling tension into a moment of clarity. "We will not tolerate cruelty," he spoke, voice rasping but resolute. A ripple of agreement spread through the room, hesitant at first but swelling as others joined in. It was a gentle chorus rising against the storm, but still, the billionaire's eyes flashed with anger, and I knew then that this was not simply a battle of words, it was a war brewing beneath the surface. "You think you're safe here?" he said with a sneer, surveying the crowd. "I have the power to ruin you all." His words struck like thunder, threatening to shake our newfound unity to its core, and in that moment, as I observed the expressions of fear among the patrons, despair seeped into my veins. What if standing up for what was right led not to salvation but to destruction? Were my actions bright enough to kindle a flame of change, or would it snuff out everything in its path, consuming us all? The weight of that uncertainty pressed down as I stood there, caught in the tension of what could come next. Loyalty to a tyrant often triumphs over bravery in a world woven with silk and deceit. And just as I was about to speak again, hoping to rally the strength from this unexpected motion of kindness, a young girl stood up, pointing a finger at the billionaire. "Why are you so mean?" she asked, her innocence cutting through the tension like a knife. Silence fell once more, a collective gasp escaping lips as she embodied the voice of many who dared not speak, and I realized, as I held the gaze of the cruel man before me, this wasn't just about me or the waitress or even the bitter billionaire. It was about everyone, struggling quietly against an oppressive tide of arrogance and disregard. But even as hope flickered with the light of several newfound allies, the billionaire stepped back, raising a hand with a casual, murderous grin. "This has only just begun." His challenge hung in the air like a noose, tightening around us.in that fleeting moment, standing shoulder to shoulder with those who dared to resist, I felt the pulse of possibility, yet the shadow of impending doom loomed large. What chaos would he unleash next on us, and could we hold the line? I couldn't shake the feeling that our fight had just begun, an intricate dance between resilience and ruin. As the echoes of the billionaire's ominous threat faded into the charged stillness, I felt the pulse of atmosphere shift again, growing heavier with uncertainty. The innocent, shaky voice of the young girl lingered in my ears, a stark reminder that amidst the turmoil, kindness had broken through. But even that flicker of innocence felt precarious, teetering on the edge of darkness. Let's leave, my instincts urged, thin tendrils of fear weaving through my thoughts. Yet, my feet remained anchored, as if cemented to the floor by something deeper, a call to stay for the waitress, for the manager, for the elderly couple who had taken a stand. They were all in this now, and leaving would mean surrendering not just to the billionaire's tyranny, but to the pervasive silence that had stifled so many before me. The murmurs of discontent swelled around me, a fragile unity forming, but I could sense the cracks beginning to show. The billionaire was a master of intimidation, and if I'd learned anything from this confrontation, it was that he thrived on control. If he desired chaos, he would not need to strike down our spirits directly. His very presence bore the weight of a storm. Get your hands off me, I heard the waitress whisper fiercely to a colleague who was trying to pull her away from the scene. My gaze darted in her direction, heart aching at the display of her distress. She had risked so much by daring to stand tall. I wanted to reach out, to offer her the kindred strength she seemed to desperately need, yet my limbs felt paralyzed. In that moment, the doors swished open explosively, and a figure stepped in, a man in a crisp suit, flanked by a couple of large, intimidating guards. My heart sank. He wore a smirk, one that reeked of privilege and ambition. Ah, another skirmish at my expense? He called out, effortlessly stepping into the charged atmosphere like a conqueror surveying his domain. This newcomer was clearly here to escalate what was already a fragile situation. The realization hit me like an icy splash of water. Not only did we stand against one billionaire, but another had arrived, one whose eyes gleamed with the thrill of chaos. They were like wolves circling unsuspecting prey, and I felt the sweat trickle down my back. Let's make this a real show, the new arrival laughed, his words lubricated with malice. Perhaps some entertainment will liven this dull establishment. A few patrons gasped, the reality of our position crystallizing with every moment. The restaurant, our sanctuary for a simple meal, had transformed into a battleground. Can I help you? The restaurant manager said, his voice wavering but tinged with indignation. I admired his bravery, a testament to what we had built in that brief, formless unity. But it was painfully clear that we were no match for the two of them. Fear coursed through the room, palpable and suffocating, erasing the glimmers of hope we had only just begun to ignite. I am just here to watch the fun, the second billionaire sneered, his eyes glinting like daggers, hungrily drinking in the atmosphere. Show these people that the real world isn't so forgiving. Maybe they'll learn a thing or two about their place. Before I could even process the newly heightened threat, the young girl who had spoken so bravely earlier blurted out, "You're mean and stupid." A wave of gasps enveloped her, but there was courage in her words, standing as a stark contrast to the malice before us. Mean, am I? The second billionaire turned his attention to the girl, his face twisting into a grotesque caricature of fury. You think your childish taunts mean anything? You think this is a game? My heart raced, a motherly instinct surging through me as I prepared to step toward her, knowing that her boldness could stomp out the flame we had strived to light. Why are you doing this? I shouted, my voice rising above the brewing tempest. We are just here to eat and be peaceful. The first billionaire's smirk returned, sinister and broad. Ah, peace, he practically purred, a lovely concept, but I'm afraid it's not for you. It's not for people like us. He gestured obscenely at the other patrons, expressing distaste like they were mere insects under his polished shoe. And certainly not for you. His cruel gaze latched onto each of us, sending shivers down my spine, drowning out the buoyancy of the prior moment. As the tension teetered on the edge of eruption, I turned back to scan the room, a desperate search for signs of resolve. My heart dropped when I saw the waitress, the sparkle of hope gone from her eyes, replaced with despair. The weight of defeat transcended her features, and I could almost feel the collective withdrawal, crumpling under the despotic gaze of our tormentors, but then, something whispered deep within me, urging me to challenge the silence. "We're not afraid of you," I declared, louder this time, surprising even myself. The words clung to the air, trembling with uncertainty but anchored with a flicker of conviction. "Together, we will stand against your cruelty." The second billionaire narrowed his eyes, and in that split second, I saw a glimpse of weakness, a hint of doubt swirling behind the mask of superiority. Perhaps there was a crack in his facade, an opening for strength in numbers to exploit. Perhaps we could still wield our voices against the looming shadows, and just as I began to feel hope bloom anew, the unmistakable sound of sirens wailing in the distance spiraled into the restaurant. The collective breaths of disbelief filled the space, alive with an electrifying cocktail of fear and anticipation. "Time to go," the first billionaire hissed, retreating slowly, but his eyes never leaving me. "This isn't over." I knew then that whatever happened next would tip the balance, unraveling our struggle further into chaos or catapulting us to a brighter horizon. Little did I know a much deeper plot was unfolding, one that would shatter everything I thought I knew about this battle and those who fought beside me. As their figures melted into the background of glaring lights and blaring sirens, I felt the shift of fate lingering at the threshold, poised to pounce, and the air crackled with the promise of an uncharted struggle. The restaurant doors swung shut behind the departing billionaires, but the tension lingered like a thick mist, suffocating and unresolved. Sirens screamed through the streets, a chaotic symphony that mirrored the turmoil in my heart. I stood frozen, the weight of impending action pressing heavily on my chest. Around me, the energy shifted from fear to confusion, the patrons unsure how to react to the resounding threat that still hung in the air. For a moment, I caught the waitress' tear-filled eyes and felt a jolt of solidarity. She was a brave spirit, proven by her stance against the malevolent forces. Her hands trembled as she wiped away a tear, turning slightly to face the little girl who had spoken so boldly. There was a fragile connection starting to form, the child's innocence whispering courage into the heavy atmosphere, melding with the waitress' unwavering soul. They were fighting together, and somehow, it lit a spark of defiance within me. "Is anyone hurt?" The manager called, his voice cutting through the din. It echoed with the urgency of a man trying to reclaim control amidst chaos. One by one, patrons shook their heads, but the uncertainty broiling just beneath the surface was palpable. I squeezed past the clusters of worried faces and made my way to the waitress. "You were amazing," I said, as gently as I could. It felt necessary to remind her of the strength she'd shown, the foundation upon which we could build our resistance. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked, biting her lip, the tremor betraying her fear. "They think they own this place, but it's ours at least for now," I replied, a desperate attempt to fortify us against the looming shadows of uncertainty. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes, but it was brief before it sank again beneath the reality of our situation. "We have to warn others. Prepare them. I don't know if I can face them again," she confessed, her spirit wilting under the pressure. "We can't let fear push us down," I insisted, searching for my own footing. Sparked by our conversation, my heart raced with urgency. "If we stand united, they will have no power over us." I turned back to address the gathered crowd, who had formed a loose semicircle, many still shaken and staring at the spot where the billionaires had just stood like ghosts refusing to leave. "We need to stay strong," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "They want to instill fear, divide us. But we can show them that together, we are more powerful." The little girl from before stepped forward, her small frame brimming with newfound courage. "Yeah. Together." She raised her tiny fist into the air, a warrior's gesture. A few chuckles bubbled in response, surprising her, and they started to murmur their agreement. I looked out over the crowd, seeing nods of approval and determination beginning to flicker like fireworks. "Please, if we can gather those who are willing, we can outline a plan to protect ourselves," I urged. "We can create a chain of support, someone to watch for their return, and then confront them together." The manager stepped forward again, seemingly more assured this time. "I'll talk to the staff and we can post someone at the entrance. Our customers need to know they're safe here." His shoulders visibly relaxed as he began to organize us, calling out for volunteers. My heart swelled at the sight of unity beginning to form in the midst of our fear. Perhaps we could be a beacon against the darkness. Perhaps we could reach out to those outside the walls of our temporary refuge, bringing in voices from the community, people who had faced similar threats. But just as light began to filter through the cracks of our despair, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, shattering the fragile moment. I fished it out and my stomach dropped as I saw the name flashing across the screen. My brother.as. Cautious thoughts raced through my mind. I answered. "Hello? Where are you?" "You need to come home now," he said, panic threading through his voice. "Why?" Instinctively, I glanced around the restaurant filled with familiar faces, and dread pooled in my stomach. "That I can't explain, but it's urgent. Just trust me. They're looking for you," he insisted, his words a taut line drawn between fear and protection. "Please. It's serious." The heavy reality hit like a punch. They were already striking back. My brother knew something I didn't, and before I could reply, I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye, an unfamiliar figure moving toward the entrance. Recognition dawned, and I felt my heart race. It was a man dressed in black, his eyes scanning the room, sharp and calculating. My pulse quickened, dread unfurling inside me even as the earlier spirit of unity throbbed like a hopeful drumbeat. "Something's happening," I whispered to the waitress and looked back at the crowd, my mind racing dangerously. "We need to stay alert. An enemy might already be among us." Suddenly, uncertainty mixed with resolve, urgency washing over the room. The united front we had seemed so close to forming now felt like a distant dream, a flickering candle fighting against an encroaching storm. I swallowed hard, preparing myself for the storm that was sure to come both from beyond the restaurant doors and within our fraying alliance, and just like that, the tranquility fractured again, anticipation curdling into dread, as an unseen force tightened its grip around our sanctuary, the walls pulsating with the promise of an unrelenting confrontation yet to come. The soft clatter of cutlery and muted chatter that had filled the restaurant now morphed into a heavy silence as all eyes landed on the man in black. His presence loomed like a shadow draped in menace, tall and imposing, a stark contrast to the small haven we thought we had built. My heart raced, the pulse of panic echoing in my ears as I turned to the waitress, only to find her frozen, eyes wide in fear. "Everyone, stay calm," I urged, forcing my voice to steady as it quivered beneath the weight of my own trepidation. "He hasn't come for a friendly visit." The little girl, emboldened earlier, clutched her mother's leg, her wide eyes mirroring my own fear but lacking the same understanding of the gravity of the moment. I moved instinctively closer to her and her mother, trying to project a sense of safety that I didn't fully feel myself. The man scanned the room with alarming precision. I could see his gaze flicker over the patrons. He was searching for something, or perhaps someone. Taking a deep breath, I began to move toward the manager, hoping to coalesce our small band of brave souls into an action plan, instead of allowing fear to engulf us. The manager stood rigid, looking between the man and the crowd, and my heart sank at the subtle shift in his demeanor. "What do we do?" he mouthed, eyes wide with uncertainty. Before I could respond, the man's voice cut through the thick silence like a knife. "I'm looking for someone. This is your last chance to hand them over peacefully." People began to shift uneasily, glancing nervously at one another, the weight of his words pressing down on us. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I met his gaze. Those eyes were intensely calculating, devoid of any empathy. He knew I was there, but how? "I don't know who you think you're looking for," the manager finally managed to say, though his voice cracked slightly. "Everyone here is just trying to enjoy their evening. Lies are easy to sell," the man replied, his tone icy. "But from where I'm standing, they're about to cost you dearly." The little girl had stepped closer to her mother, now clutching her tightly as though she could shield her from the impending threat. In that moment, the innocence of childhood met the brutality of adult world situations. Anger bubbled within me at the thought that such a pure spirit could be frightened by the likes of this man, from the corner of my eye, I caught the waitress inching forward, her determination reigniting. She had clearly faced violence before, and though fear coursed through her, I watched her unwillingness to back down. "That's not how this works. We don't cower to you," she shouted, her voice shaking but resolute. I felt a rush of pride for her bravery, but it was quickly replaced by a fear of potential violence. "Brave words," the man mused, a twisted smile briefly gracing his lips. "But foolish. Hand over what you owe me, and it'll make this easy for everyone." "What do you mean?" I stepped in, my voice rising to challenge him. "What do any of us owe you? We want nothing to do with your games. What you owe me is time," he said, narrowing his eyes at me. "The clock is ticking, and you have no idea how much I'm willing to lose to find you. Make this easier for yourselves." The tension in the room escalated, and I could feel the panic beginning to rise, unease palpable as we gauged each other's reactions. My heart raced with thoughts of my brother's urgent warning. There was something deeply sinister at play, and I realized the confrontation wasn't just about me but about the entire community gathered here. Before I could comprehend the swirling confusion, my phone buzzed again, the piercing sound jarring me back to the situation at hand. It was a message from my brother: "Don't trust anyone. Get out. Now." Panic engulfed me. They were closing in. "We need to leave." I shouted over the rising tension, but hesitation rippled through the crowd. "Follow me." The waitress had shouted as well, her bravery igniting something in me. The words unleashed a wave of determination crashing against the tide of fear. We couldn't crumble now. I grabbed the girl's hand, motioning for her mother to join us. "Trust us," I encouraged, willing the collective spirit of courage we had begun to build. "We can't let them take what's ours. We need each other." I scanned the room, catching glimpses of nodding heads. Volunteers began to form behind me, stepping forward, fortified by the sheer instinct to protect. But as we took our steps forward toward the exit, the man's voice rose again, laced with an intensity that sliced through my resolve. "You can't simply run away. This isn't just about you. It's personal now," he hissed, stepping toward us as I felt the walls begin to move closer in a way that was both metaphorical and all too real. In that moment, just as I was about to lead our makeshift army into the unknown, the little girl let out a terrified whimper, her eyes going wide as she pointed. "Look!" I turned to see the restaurant door burst open, shadows casting long, dark shapes across the floor. My heart sank further as I recognized the silhouettes. More men dressed in black came rushing in, ready to stake their claim. The urgency burned brightly within me, the resolve that had started with unity now fractured under the weight of impending chaos. With one final glance back at the waitress, I felt the flame of fear flicker in my chest, but beneath it, a new determination took root. We couldn't afford to succumb to despair anymore. And as darkness surged forward, I realized we had only one option: to fight back, no matter the cost. The collective courage was about to be tested, and we had to decide if we would succumb to fear or rise as one against the intrusive shadows. The clock was ticking, and the storm was ready to break. Panic gripped the room like a vice as the newcomers stormed in, merging with the turbulent energy that had already enveloped us. I could barely comprehend the shift. My heart raced, pounding loudly in my ears while my mind frantically cycled through escape routes, hiding spots, anything available to save the trembling faces surrounding me. "Stay close," I urged, not just to the little girl but to everyone, a plea that seemed woefully inadequate for the chaos unfurling before us. The man in black, still unyielding, turned sharply, his fierce gaze locking onto the newcomers, a subtle flicker of recognition passing between them. My stomach knotted at the realization this wasn't just a random act of hostility but a calculated takeover, a web of sinister connections tangled amidst us. The waitress stepped back beside me, the fire in her eyes wavering but still present. "We can't let them take control. We outnumber them," she whispered through clenched teeth, her resolve forcing me to latch onto hope. It didn't matter that fear nipped at our heels, we were united in this moment. On my count, we move, I stated, positioning myself in front of the little girl, blocking her innocent gaze from the imminent danger. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on my shoulders, but the thought of fighting for their lives, for anyone's survival, shone brighter in my mind than the grave uncertainty. 3.2. My breath caught as adrenaline coursed through me, awareness sharpening my senses. Suddenly, the atmosphere snapped like a taut wire. The man in black yelled an order, and his counterparts surged forward. We were no longer just patrons in a restaurant, we had become unwilling warriors in a desperate battle against unspeakable evil. The chaos erupted as chairs toppled, and the cacophony of fear morphed into a wild symphony of survival. I tightened my hold on the little girl's hand, tugging her away from the chaos while redirecting the crowd toward the back. The waitress had transformed into an unexpected leader, guiding the frantic escape with a confidence she seemingly didn't fully feel, bolstering our fears and providing unexpected comfort. Over here. She gestured toward a small kitchen exit, the faint glow of light beckoning us through the veneer of panic. My heart surged with gratitude for her fierce spirit. People stumbled over one another, bodies instinctively following her lead as the sound of shouts and blaring chaos filled the air. Together, we fled through the narrow space, the thumping of our heartbeats merging into a frantic melody. Yet, just as I thought our chance was within reach, a figure loomed at the entrance of the kitchen. Another man, equally threatening, stood blocking our way, his face taut with a dangerous glint of excitement mixed with fierce determination. "Not so fast," he sneered. "You think you can just walk away from this?" I felt the little girl's hand tighten around mine, her small fingers trembling against my skin. Somewhere deep within me, a primal instinct ignited. The desire to protect surged to the forefront, louder than the roars of chaos surrounding us. "Out of the way!" I shouted, channeling my rage into something formidable. "You can't keep us here." As if to emphasize the precariousness of hope, a shattering sound erupted from within the restaurant, and I turned to see a figure, one of the original men in black, advancing toward us. In his hand, a weapon glinted ominously, sending chills through my spine. Without thinking, I stepped forward, feeling the adrenaline meld with sheer, vengeful strength. "You'll have to go through me," I exclaimed, unleashing a growl I didn't know I possessed, but the response was swift. The man smirked, the gleam in his eyes revealing a twisted anticipation, and before I could react further, the waitress intervened. "No. We need to split up," she urged. "We can't all fight at once." Her words were like cool water amidst a blaze, and while defiance clashed against dread within me, I recognized the wisdom in her voice. Our survival rested in strategy. "Let's divert them," she proposed urgently. "Some of us can go left, others right. We can create a distraction. We have to do this together. Trust your instincts." It was an unorthodox plan, birthed out of necessity, but I felt something within me shift. The warmth of community ignited hope, even amid encroaching chaos. Unsure of how, but knowing we must act, I nodded, determined to rally the little girl's mother and a handful of others to join me. As we hurried to split up, I took one last glance back at the waitress, who readied herself to lead the others away. Our eyes met for a brief moment, an unspoken understanding exchanged. We were in this together, despite the odds stacked against us. With a pounding heart, I signaled for my group to head to the left while the waitress commandeered the right. The moment felt both monumental and fragile, a delicate balance on the precipice of survival. But just as we made our separation, the unmistakable screeching of sirens surrounded the building, filled with a sudden sense of hope. It was a glimmer of salvation, but as quickly as it appeared, the sound transformed into an echo of dread. The sirens were closer to our pursuers than we could ever have anticipated. "Run!" I shouted, feeling dread rise up to clash with hope once more. The exit loomed, but the heavy breath of uncertainty hung in the air like a suffocating fog. With every step, my mind raced against time and the boiling shadows. We were divided but bound by purpose. Would we find safety? Or would we abandon everything for a chance at survival? Just then, my phone buzzed again, vibrating relentlessly in my pocket. I fumbled to retrieve it, seeing another message from my brother flash across the screen. "They're coming for you. Don't trust anyone." You have to find her. Puzzled and frightened, I barely had time to grasp the weight of his words before I turned to see the approaching figures closing Enus against the shadows, with indistinguishable fears and the hope of rescue intertwining tightly within our grasp. Would the sirens prove to be salvation, or were they merely a prelude to our downfall? Only time would tell. The sirens shrieked like wounded animals, their cries a haunting backdrop to our frantic escape. My heart hammered against my ribcage, each pulse echoing the fear surging through me. The text from my brother flickered in my mind, a cryptic warning that sent shivers cascading down my spine. I couldn't decipher its meaning, but the urgency behind it resonated deeply. Simeon's fate hinged on this moment, perhaps even my own. Keep moving. I urged the small group of terrified souls that huddled close behind me, instinctively guiding them toward the dim light ahead. The little girl, clutching my hand with a grip that belied her size, sporadically glanced back, the innocent panic in her wide eyes slicing through the cacophony around us, but with every step, an ominous sense of foreboding echoed louder than the blaring sirens. My brother's words gnawed at me. Who was I supposed to trust? The waitress? The strangers beside me? As a chilling wave washed over me, I couldn't shake the feeling that betrayal lurked just around the corner, cloaked in shadows. Rounding a corner, faces flushed with exertion, we spotted a sleek side exit that wasn't visible from the main dining area. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced with dread as I spotted a man lurking by the door, silhouetted against the backlight. He had an air of authority, a palpable confidence that exuded danger. The scowl on his face was unmistakable. Another one of them. Stop. His voice thundered, filled with a chilling command that resonated deep within my core. I froze, adrenaline tightening every muscle, threatening to divide us just as swiftly as the fear contained in that one word. Go. I cried, sensing that we didn't have the luxury of hesitation. The others hesitated for mere seconds, their expressions a whirlwind of panic and uncertainty, but the fleeting glimmer in the little girl's eyes stirred something deep inside. In her face, I could see the embodiment of innocence that I needed to protect. I charged forward, pushing through the chaos that sizzled in the air. "I'll distract him," I yelled, desperate to keep him occupied. As my own capabilities met with a massive wave of fear, my heart broke knowing I was about to risk everything for strangers. "Are you crazy?" One of the men behind me gasped, but I didn't linger on his words. I clenched my fists, the primal urge to protect overcasting every rational thought in my mind. "Just go." With a swift glance, I saw them darting for the side exit, clinging to each other as their world fragmented into a surge of chaos. The burgeoning desire to make it out alive fueled my decision as I stepped forward, feigning confidence even as my insides churned with uncertainty. The man shifted, one brow raised in amused curiosity. "And you think you can stop me?" In that brief moment of bravado, I charged toward him, my body fueled by the adrenaline igniting my senses. "Maybe not. But I can definitely make a scene." He laughed, the sound dripping with derision, but I was already past the point of rational thought. We collided, his hand shooting out, grasping my arm with a grip like iron. His eyes flickered with a mix of irritation and intrigue, and before I could register my own shock, a small voice cut through our standoff. "Please don't hurt him." It was the little girl, her voice tenuous yet firm, piercing through the noise. She had turned back, her tiny figure framed by dim light and looming shadows. "He's trying to help us." The man's expression softened, momentarily disarmed by her innocence. For a heartbeat, time hung in the balance, teetering between violence and kindness. I felt the weight of vulnerability crash over me, forcing me to consider possibility where I sensed only danger. "He is?" I demanded, the words slipping through clenched teeth. "You think he's trying to help?" Suddenly, the tension in his grip eased, and I could see a spark of resentment darken his features. "You're playing a dangerous game, kid," he warned, but now, there was apprehension behind his voice as his gaze flickered to the child. "I just want to get home," she said, quivering but unwavering. Something fragile and soulful bloomed in the midst of our tumult. And then, there was a flash of movement at the corner of my vis. Iona form darting toward us, another man clad in dark clothing, with a gun raised. "Get away from her!" he shouted, his voice threadbare and aimed at the man in front of me. Panic surged anew through me as I recognized the urgency mirrored in the shifting shadows. The unexpected collision of alliances tugged at the fabric of the chaos we all found ourselves in. My instincts wrestled with the emerging truth: I couldn't escape not just the physical threat but the emotional weight of our choices. "Run!" the alley echoed with shouts. The waitress was visible again, urgency lighting up her face as she waved toward our exit. "Now!" In that fleeting moment, the world became a blur of desperate movements, hope exchanged with fear wrapped into a chaotic tapestry of existence. I turned, pulling the little girl with me, but as we dashed forward, a freezing sensation wrapped around my chest as I looked back to find the man still standing, faced with the approaching danger. "Let's go!" I screamed, torn between the pulsating need to flee and the desire to ensure he did too. But before I knew it, his voice rang out, low and commanding. "Finish what you started." The atmosphere shattered, the world spinning into disarray as we took the plunge into the unknown, hearts racing and lights dimming. In that solitary flicker of hope and despair, I realized I had no idea who to trust, nor what awaited us on the other side. Would embracing the chaos finally lead us to safety, or would it bury us deeper into the quagmire of desolation? Only time could unveil the truth. The rush of adrenaline propelled me forward, but with every pounding heartbeat, doubt clawed at my mind. We burst out of the restaurant and into the night, the sirens still wailing in the distance like banshees warning of a storm. The little girl held my hand with such a fierce grip that I feared she might never let go. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the man pursuing us, a menacing shadow hot on our tails. But there was nothing. Eerily, the chaos of the restaurant faded behind us, leaving only the distant echo of our panicked breaths mingling with the night. We did it," I panted, trying to gauge our surroundings. A street lay in front of us, shrouded in murky darkness, the street lamps flickering sporadically as if unsure of their purpose. I could sense the other escapees milling around, all wearing expressions etched with confusion and hope. The waitress, having dashed out behind us, emerged from the veil of night, where light met shadow. Her eyes shone with a promise of sanctuary, a beacon amidst the turmoil. "Over here," she beckoned urgently, motioning toward an alley that led off the street. We followed her, the little girl pressed tightly against me, her small frame trembling slightly with every footfall. "What's going to happen now?" she whispered, her voice a thread of vulnerability in the swirling chaos. I knelt down, searching her face, wishing I could offer her reassurance. "Well, find a safe place, I promise," I said, although uncertainty gnawed at my insides. I wasn't sure if I could protect her from another round of danger, especially when I couldn't even protect myself. As we hurried into the alley, an unexpected kindness from the waitress emerged. "Listen, there's an old storage unit down here that I know is empty. We can hide there until it's safe," she whispered, glancing back nervously. "Hide? What if they find us?" One of the men from our group interjected, his expression bathed in fear. "Then we fight," I said, surprising even myself with the fierceness in my voice. A counterargument danced on the tongue of one of the others: fear, uncertainty, but the waitress stood firm, eyes determined. "This is our best shot. Come on." As we moved cautiously toward the storage unit, I noticed the little girl begin to tremble again. "I'm scared," she admitted softly, and in the flickering light, it felt like a fragile truth unraveling between us. Fear and vulnerability, an echo of innocence that demanded protection. "Hey," I said, crouching beside her and doing my best to conceal my own fear, "I'm scared too. But we're going to be okay. You're brave. You're so brave." I wanted to believe those words myself. She met my gaze, shining tears thickening the sheen of her large, expressive eyes. "What if I get lost?" she asked, that thread of vulnerability pulling at my heart. "Then I'll find you," I replied with a sincerity that enveloped both of us for that fleeting moment. The storage unit stood lonely, its door rusted and slightly ajar as if inviting the seeping dread of the outside world to touch it. The waitress shoved it open, and as we stepped inside, the darkness tangled around us, a shroud of haziness enveloping every corner despite the narrow rays of moonlight penetrating through the door gap. Inside, the silence was profound, yet it felt heavy with an unspeakable weight, a huddled group of souls caught in the crossfire of fear. I pressed my back against a cold wall, watching the others find cramped corners that created a meager semblance of safety. It was claustrophobic, but there was still a strange sense of relief in being together, even in this suffocating enclosure that we waited in a state of heightened alert, listening to the distant sounds of sirens intermingled with the haunting solitude of the night. I could feel the little girl beside me shaking, and without thinking, I hugged her close. Part of me tied to that innocent hope she embodied, reinforcing my determination to keep her, and our new family of survivors, safe against the tide of chaos threatening to wash over us. Suddenly, a wary voice punctured the silencia voice. I recognized. She was right to trust me, the man from the restaurant said as he stepped into the dim space, his figure catching the moonlight. The air turned electric, and almost instinctively, every muscle in my body tensed. "Why are you here?" I demanded, heart racing, ready to defend the little girl and the others behind me. "I'm not with them," he said, raising his hand slightly, a gesture of peace that felt foreign in this forsaken night. "I'm here to help. But we don't have much time before they realize you're gone." "What do you mean?" The question hung in the air, fear creeping into the edges of my thoughts. "Because they're coming for the piece of information you carry," he replied, eyes narrowing. "Especially your brother." A sudden realization sank like stone in my gut. My brother? The staggering revelation rattled the fragmented walls of my resolve. I could feel layers of my precarious emotional stability cascading like the darkness of the night. What was hidden in shadows now leapt viciously to light. "What does he have to do with any of this?" Before he could respond, the distant sound of footsteps echoed toward us, a haunting reminder of the impending danger. Time slipped through my fingers as panic suffocated reason. "They must be close." I whispered. "Trust me," he said, and I could see shadows dancing in his eyes, a flicker of sincerity against the ominous backdrop of fear. "I know the way out. But you'll need to choose stay hidden or risk everything to our UN." In that moment, with fear swirling like a tempest around me and the unknown licking at our heels, I understood the weight of our choices resting heavily on my shoulders. The little girl's wide eyes filled with fear reflected my turbulent thoughts. Would I take a leap into the chaos for the sake of escape, or would I embrace safety in silence? Would throwing our fate into the hands of someone I barely trusted be our salvation or our doom? The truth hung in the air, tantalizingly close yet impossibly out of reach. As the footsteps crept nearer, the shadows began closing in, and everything seemed perilously balanced on a knife's edge. For a moment, the silence in the storage unit hung thick with uncertainty, the distant footsteps drawing inexorably closer as if time itself had come to a standstill. My heart pounded in rhythm with the muffled sound, a drumbeat of fear underscored by the fierce grip of the little girl's hand. Why would my brother matter to them? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, my mind racing to piece together the fragments of truth. "He's just a regular guy." The man stepped closer, bringing with him a gust of fear mingled with urgency. "That's what they want you to think. He's been involved in dangerous things. They need what he knows, and if they think you're connected, they won't stop until they find you." The weight of betrayal loomed in the air heavier than before, the acknowledgement that the life I had been leading had threads of darkness woven through it, threads that led back to my brother. How had I not seen this coming? My heart sank at the thought of him being pulled into this storm, and I couldn't help but wonder how much of my world had been kept from me. "That I can't just abandon him," I said, the words catching in my throat. Suddenly, the fragile safety of the storage unit felt like it could cave in around us at any moment. "We don't have time for this," the man urged, urgency flaring in his voice, each syllable punctuated by the growing sound of boots thudding on pavement. "We need to move." The little girl fidgeted, an innocent reflection of my rising panic. "Are we in trouble?" she asked, looking at me with her wide, questioning eyes that seemed to search for certainty, any reassurance that this chaos would cease soon. "Not if we get out of here," I murmured, but my own words felt hollow in the face of the sirens and unseen dangers that lurked. Although I wanted to assure her that everything would be all right, I felt like I was weaving a fragile web of promises that was more likely to shatter under the weight of harsh realities. "Follow my lead," the man said, locking eyes with me, a flicker of something determination, perhaps igniting a spark of hope deep inside me. "Outside, there's an escape route that leads to my car. They won't think to look there." As he stepped back toward the door, I hesitated, torn between my instinct to protect the little girl and the rush of adrenaline that urged me forward. But the chanting whispers of my conscience prevailed. "Wait," I called. "If we leave, what about my brother? If he's in trouble, we can't just take off." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw a ripple of sincerity, but it was quickly masked by impatience. "What do you think they'll do if they find us? We can't save him if we're caught." That was the truth, and I knew it. But the thought of abandoning my brother, of potentially leaving him vulnerable, gnawed at my gut like a twisting ache of betrayal. "I can't just run," I repeated, my voice shaking slightly. Suddenly, the little girl's grip tightened once more. "I don't want to lose anyone else," she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. "Please don't let them take you away." In that moment, her vulnerability tore at the seams of my resolve. I knelt down, bringing my face closer to hers. "I won't leave you, I promise." I hesitated before continuing, "But if there's a chance to help my brother, we can't ignore that. Maybe if we find him first." The footsteps outside hastened, their rhythm punctuated by frantic voices calling out orders. Panic tightened around my chest. "We have to decide now. They'll find us any second," the man pressed, looking back at the door, then back at me. There was danger painted in every corner of my mind, but every pulse of fear drove home the responsibility I felt for the little girl and now my brother. "If we're going, we need to go now," I said finally, the urgency of the moment solidifying in my chest, but as the words left my lips, the door creaked ominously on its hinges, and the heart-stopping moment of realization struck. I had said we needed to go. What if that meant running not just from the danger that hunted us, but also from the love I still had for my brother? The only reply to my thoughts was a thunderous bang against the storage unit door that reverberated through my bones. "They're here," the man stated, his voice low and urgent. "We're out of time." Gripping the little girl's hand tightly, I felt the weight of countless lives lingering in the thin air, as if the very act of attempting to escape would render me complicit in something deeper, something I was just beginning to understand. But I knew there was no turning back now. With a shared glance among us, bound by fear and hope, we bolted as the door exploded inward, crashing to the ground like fragile glass, scattering opportunity and choices behind us. Outside, the blinding city lights glared fiercely, but the deeper current of uncertainty rumbled beneath the surface. Instinct drove us forward into the ruthless night, the echoes of my brother's potential fate blending seamlessly with the desperation of unseen pursuers, my heart divided between fear of losing him and a desperate hope of finding a way back. The path was obscured, but we ran into the darkness, chasing the flicker of light that shimmered just before us, our fate teetering on the threshold of an uncertain dawn. Sprinting into the cold night air felt like stepping into a frigid wave, the adrenaline stirring my senses while panic clawed at my chest. The little girl held tightly to my hand, and in the chaos surrounding us, I could sense her pull of innocence grounded in a stark reality none of us could ignore. The streetlights cast a harsh glow upon our escape, illuminating the fear etched on every face, the palpable uncertainty thickening the air. The man I barely knew led us, urging us into the labyrinth of side streets and alleyways. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was guiding us toward an unseen threat, yet the oppressive danger behind us loomed like a monster waiting to pounce. With every step, my brother's warning nagged at my thoughts. Everyone was a potential enemy, every corner might conceal betrayal. "Where are we going?" I panted, glancing back to ensure the others were still following, the distant echoes of sirens now muted yet persistent in the air. The man cast a glance over his shoulder but kept pushing forward. "Just trust me. We need to get to my car. It's concealed from sight." As we rounded a corner, suddenly we were met with a wide-open street, the asphalt gleaming beneath the moonlight. My heart sank as I noticed the absence of shadows. The street was bereft of any escape routes, the flat stretch exposing us entirely to the night's unpredictable dangers. Overhead, a flickering street lamp buzzed with electricity, casting a sterile spotlight on our frantic group. "Make a run for it," the man shouted, urgency in his tone. "I parked just up ahead. Stay low." We bolted forward, and my senses heightened to the sound of footsteps quickening behind us, a haunting echo that felt like fate bearing down. My breath snagged in my throat as panic threatened to tighten its grip, a desperate whisper that told me I had to protect the little girl at all costs. "Keep up," I urged, not just for her sake but for all of us. The urgency of the moment melded with a hungry resolve. Out of the darkness, a beam of headlights pierced through the gloom. The unmistakable shape of a car appeared. My heart swelled at the sight. Safety felt palpable just out of reach. But just as we were close enough to reach what felt like sanctuary, the unmistakable sound of heavy footfalls approached from behind. "Get in," the man commanded urgently, flinging the car door open as we poured into the back seat like water rushing through a crack. The little girl scrambled in beside me, her small form small against the leather seats as fear coiled around her like a vice. "Go now," I shouted, panic sustaining my adrenaline, my voice ringing with urgency in the confined space. The man threw the car into gear just as we heard shouting echo from the street. As we sped away, darkness blurring through the windows, I felt a fleeting rush of relief mixed with confusion, a hollow space between the life I knew and the terrifying unknown spiraling ahead. "Who are they?" I whispered to the man, trying to catch my breath. "What do they want from us?" He hesitated, the grip on the steering wheel tightening as if trying to wrestle with the demons of the truth. "They're connected to your brother, they want information he possesses. But it's deeper than that. Your brother's involvement has made him a target." "I don't understand," I stammered, the clarity of my brother being pulled into the shadows, churning with bewilderment. "Why would he?" But the man cut me off. "You have to believe me. It's vital that we find your brother before they do. If you want to save him, we can't waste time." With the weight of his words still thundering in my head, I glanced at the little girl, wrestling with the mingled feelings of fear and confusion swirling around us. Her innocent eyes were anchored with uncertainty, mirroring my own apprehension as the reality of our situation sank deeper into our bones. Time passed like shadows slipping through my fingers. The urgency of the night pressed down upon us, and doubt began to knot itself tightly within my mind. Would we find my brother? Were we walking straight into the claws of danger instead of salvation? "Where do we go?" I asked again, purposefully this time, my voice catching slightly. "Where can we hide?" "There's a safe house not far from here," he admitted, trying to keep his eyes steady on the road ahead, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "It's where I take people looking to escape from them?" I echoed, unsure what that meant for the girl beside me, who clung tightly to my side. "What do you mean by them?" He took a deep breath, slicing through the veils of tension stretching between us. "The organization," he said finally, "they're powerful. If they suspect that your brother has made a slip, they'll come for him quickly and without remorse. The gravity of his information could sink them, and they won't hesitate to silence him." Hope flickered and dimmed in my chest like a dying candle. "What information?" I asked desperately, trying to wring more clarity from his words. "Information about corruption rampant in places you wouldn't believe. Your brother uncovered something significant, and they've realized he's a threat. He needs you, anyone who can help him before their reach pulls him deeper into the darkness." In that heartbeat, the realization struck me. My brother, whom I had thought was just living a regular life, had been caught in a menacing web, entangled in dangers I could barely imagine. Could I be the key to unlocking salvation? The car took a sudden turn, and I shoved aside the waves of apprehension. Forcing clarity, I turned to push through the curtain of fear. "And what happens if we get to this safe house? Will he be there?" "Yes," he promised. "If he knows you're coming, it might set off alarms, but it's our best shot." We continued to weave through the streets, racing against time and the encroaching shadows. Each turn felt like a step closer to either rescue or ruin, the uncertainty pressing heavier than before. After what felt like endless minutes, we pulled into an unremarkable driveway that led to a quaint little house that seemed to blend in with the night, oversized bushes shrouding its presence like whispers of secrets held deep. "Stay low," he instructed again as we exited the car, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "Shouldn't we go around first?" I asked, my feet already shuffling, but he shook his head. "Just trust me. We can't keep hiding forever." Pushing aside the creeping tide of doubt, we shuffled toward the side entrance, the trail becoming treacherous, each creak of the door and rustling of leaves swelling with tension. The little girl's fingers tightened around mine, grounding me to hope, and as soon as we stepped inside, the scent of old memories washed over me, a sharp contrast to the chaos outside. The darkness enveloped us, illuminated only by a single shaft of light that broke through the dust-laden air. As the door clicked shut behind us, I could feel the heaviness of all we had faced thundering in my heart, the fear, the uncertainty, the vulnerability melding into a force I could no longer ignore. Without warning, a figure stepped out from the shadows, drenched in uncertainty and familiar warmth. The only sound that could penetrate the throbbing silence was the echo of my brother's voice, heavy with fear yet brimming with relief. "You shouldn't have come." In that moment, time shattered into pieces of glimmering possibility, sibling solidarity clashing with all the fragments of chaos that had strung us along. My heart thundered in my ribs, teetering on the precipice. I took a tentative step forward, the air thick with potential, and as our eyes met, I knew we were no longer alone in this fight. "Then we'll go together," I said softly, a wellspring of belonging surging forth, and only time would tell if our reunion could ever shatter the darkness suffocating us, or if it would engulf us entirely, dissolving our unwavering ties into the shadows. We were a force burgeoning in the night, our fates upon the line, and the urgency of what lay ahead offered no mercy, like a heart-stopping pulse racing toward resolution.